Hey guys, Drifter here. Today we're going to be doing something fun. Instead of playing a video game or talking about a social issue, instead I want to rank the best FPS games of all time in this ultimate FPS tier list, going from S+, A, B, C, D, all the way down to didn't play. And if you see the games we have available to talk about today, it's a lot of them. We're going to be talking about a lot of games here, a lot of classics. We've got Stalker, we've got COD 4, we've got Unreal Tournament, Quake, Mirror's Edge, and Alien Isolation, all mixed in. And it's not going to be a gameplay-free video either, because I've played a lot of these games, and as I talk about them, we'll put up footage of the older games from this channel and some trailers and stuff like that. So it's going to be fun. And for reference, the difference on this between A and S tier isn't so much in terms of technical quality of gameplay. An A tier game and an S tier game would probably play about the same, but the S plus tier up here is really reserved for games that were super innovative, for games that sort of changed the entire idea of how you think about first-person shooters, or were at very least the first one to do something new. So without any further ado, let's jump right in with one of my all-time favorites, Left 4 Dead. Now, Left 4 Dead is one of the very first cooperative multiplayer shooters where you fight against the zombie horde and progress through a level. And gameplay-wise, I feel like it really deserves to be in a B tier. As far as being a shooter and having good shooting mechanics, it was a very rudimentary game. It had very cool maps and it had very cool enemies, but I'm actually going to elevate it from B to S tier because it was one of the very first games to properly implement the director strategy, the horde strategy, and cooperative first-person shooting as you progress through a level together, and it tells a story on top of that. This game was like nothing else I had ever played when it first came out, and me and my friends had a fantastic time. I still remember running through the cornfields on the last level and being like downed and like crawling into the helicopter to get away, or maybe getting downed in the chopper. This was one of these games that you could play with your friends, and then when you got tired of that, you could go play the zombies and play against your friends. It was super fun. I think Left 4 Dead changed how we view cooperative multiplayer shooters entirely, so it gets an S plus tier. So let's go down here to Killzone. I unfortunately did not play. I did not play Killzone 3 or Killzone 2, but I did play Killzone Shadowfall. Unfortunately, I have to rank Killzone Shadowfall as a D tier game because both the mechanics were simple, the story was simple. This was like a PlayStation 4 launch title. At the time, the graphics were beautiful and there were some clever things going on with the game, but it ultimately wasn't that interesting to me. Now, in other Sony games, I didn't play Resistance 2, but I did play Resistance 1, and I feel like Resistance 1 is probably a B to A tier game. I'm actually going to probably put it up here in the, ooh, this is a tough one because the gameplay is kind of right on the borderline. It's a little bit clunky in areas, but it's got a cool story. I think I'm going to bump it from B to A just because its multiplayer was very, very interesting. I remember playing Resistance and it had wacky guns that would make Halo seem jealous. It had interesting ideas for game modes, and on top of that, it was one of the first games to make proper use of the PlayStation motion controls, not only when you're balancing on beams and stuff in the game, but also in multiplayer. If somebody hits you with a sticky grenade, you shake the controller to throw the sticky grenade off, and I think little things like that was just downright brilliant. So mechanically probably B, but I'm going to give it a promotion just for being very creative. As you can see here, I definitely have bias toward games that are more creative. So let's go with something a little bit more modern, and let's talk about Titanfall. This is Respawn's baby, and I think Titanfall is one of the best first-person shooters ever made. Titanfall was brilliant in so many ways. I had so much fun playing this game, parkouring, doing my little scuff jumps on console. The weapons were cool. It was in a cyberpunk future. You could ride your Titan. You could fight in your Titan. You could have your Titan follow you and customize it. There were these AI all over the map, which was actually kind of terrible, and that's actually dragging it down a tier. I want to put it in S, but the AI on the map and farming the AI to win was kind of a terrible idea. It was a good-looking game. It single-handedly propped up the Xbox One, but at the end of the day, Titanfall 1 had very little multiplayer content or reason to play it other than the fact that it was just mechanically brilliant. Titanfall 1 is one of the most mechanically brilliant shooters I have ever played, but it didn't have a hook and it didn't have anything interested to keep me grinding that game. And Titanfall 2 actually follows a very similar path. Now, its story, oh yeah, I almost forgot, Titanfall 1 didn't even have a campaign. It was like a multiplayer campaign. That was really weird. Titanfall 2 had a very short campaign, but it was very concise, very touching, very emotional. And the multiplayer had kind of the same problem. We had AI all over the map. They were running around doing things. You could farm them. And unfortunately, I feel that Titanfall 2 was slightly worse than Titanfall 1 because they made it slower. They made less wall running, less cool stuff you could do, less resets. They slowed the game down for a casual audience, and I totally understand why. And I think down here we're going to be taking a look at Apex Legends in a little bit, which is even slower than Titanfall 2, but that kind of works, whereas I feel that Titanfall 2 runs flat. I feel like in the middle of your combat, you run out of momentum a lot. And I was pretty critical of this game when it first came out, though it is still quite fun to play. B is not bad, okay? B is not bad at all. These down here are bad. Titanfall 2 is still a pretty good game. Moving along, let's talk about an unexpected S+ tier game. You've been looking at it right here, Alien Isolation. For those of you that don't remember, this is a first-person survival horror game set in the Alien universe where you play Ripley's daughter. And what's cool about this is that they kept that retro futuristic vibe of the old one. There's like VHS tapes you play, an old floppy disk, and old computers. The game is entirely in the dark, basically no weapons. The aliens can come at you from the ceiling and floor. They hunt you all over the place. It's really a genuinely fun game, and it made first-person shooters scary again, and I do the little weird air quotes here because you don't really do a lot of shooting in this game as much as you do hiding. It also looked great. Now, I think mechanically speaking, it deserves to be in the A tier. I feel like that it plays really well, it's really clever, but it doesn't have anything that really elevates it other than being artistic and neat. But they released this patch where you can play the whole game in VR, and that is a totally different, radical experience that just totally elevates this game right on up to S+ tier. Way scarier. It is way cooler, and of course scarier when the aliens are like me-sized in my face. It totally changes the game. And on a similar note, I'm picking all the games I like here. We're going through a lot of the fun ones early on. Let's talk about Mirror's Edge, okay? This was EA's baby and EA's flop, but it is a game that I absolutely love, even to the point of doing If It Were Realistic episodes and doing my own parkour based on Mirror's Edge. My wife even cosplayed as Faith from Mirror's Edge because she liked the game. But let's talk about the game itself. It's a first-person runner. I mean, technically you can take people down and you can get guns and shoot, but the game doesn't really reward you for that. Most of the mechanics are designed around running fast. What I liked about the game is that it was first-person platforming done right. It was mechanically advanced, but would reward you once you mastered those advanced techniques. I loved how each section of the story had a different color theme to match what was going on, but the color red was always your guiding arrow, kind of wherever you wanted to go on the map or in the game. It would kind of point you in the right path so you could keep moving fast. I like the character of Faith. I think she's a really fun character. She's got an interesting and oddly motivating story. The ending is super cool. It had really fun time trials, custom modes, and the game rewarded you for pacifism. It would give you achievements for not touching a gun, for not shooting people, and for not throwing people off of a building. You can beat this entire first-person shooter only through running and saving your sister's life, which I thought was super cool. Unfortunately, the game was a massive flop, and it lost EA a lot of money. It was their art house baby, and I still have a super soft spot for it. I really enjoyed this turning the FPS genre on its head. I'm moving it up here. It even had the wall running stuff before Titanfall did, so I think that is an S+ tier game. And unfortunately, its sequel I'm putting down here in the hot dog water area in the D list. So I played Mirror's Edge 2 Catalyst, and I was unimpressed. It was way more combat oriented. I found the controls to be slightly worse, and they added some sort of momentum system into the game that increased the delay to the point where it felt like I was playing on an old bad TV and less like I was really reacting and moving fast through the game. So it felt a lot clunkier. Genuinely didn't like its sequel. Moving along, let's take a look at some COD games. How about that? We've done the COD tier list before. Call of Duty Ghost, D. Terrible game. Launched broken, had a bomb glitch in multiplayer. They played for millions of dollars with that active. They had fake patches before tournaments. They had the insta-kill dogs. They had the insta-kill IEDs. They had terrible color and palette design, fast time to kill, weird networking. We were bamboozled at the reveal with transforming maps only to find out that was just one of them. It was overall not a very good or very fun COD experience. It almost killed this channel and made me have to go get a real job. My God, Ghost was very, very frustrating. Though to be fair, it had fantastic DLC. Absolutely beautiful DLC in Call of Duty Ghost that was very fun that Call of Duty mimicked afterwards, but the actual game itself was mechanically inferior to almost everything else. And then let's take a look at Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. I kind of think this is one, I've been really soft on a lot of games, okay? I've moved a lot of games up here into the S+ tier list just because I personally like them or think that they're innovative. And Advanced Warfare is that. It was the very first Call of Duty game to use advanced movement or exoskeletons or future weapons and things like that. But they also had loot boxes, and they also had stat-changing weapons, and they had a number of bugs and things that didn't quite pan out. So I will say that I personally had a ton of fun with Advanced Warfare. I would play it today, but objectively, rationally, as a critic, I must acknowledge the fact that several areas of this game were lacking. The advanced movement was not properly designed. It was really herky-jerky, and it was also designed to kind of replicate a mobile game and appeal to whales that are just trying to buy more and more and more loot boxes. It started a trend that nearly ended Call of Duty in the long run, which is kind of sad. And the kill streaks in this game really sucked. I like the weapons. I think the weapons are quite fun, but I really hated the kill streaks in this one. So I've actually gotten so much going on, I'm going to have to shrink my page a little bit here so we can see more games. There we go. That seems a little bit appropriate. And we'll move on to some more Call of Duty games. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, way down here in the hot dog water territory again. Did not like that one at all. I feel like they took the future gun idea from Advanced Warfare, and it is set further in the future than Advanced Warfare, but they made it even more spacey. But they kept the loot boxes, they kept the stat-changing weapons, they had all this goofy stuff in the game, like teleporting to other dimensions and black holes, and it made it into an ability battle game and not a first-person shooter, which is what I wanted to play with Call of Duty. There was not as much shooting as much as there was crazy space lock-on shotgun nonsense. And it frustrated me so much and it ran so poorly that I actually skipped that one and instead did in-depth on, I believe it was the Modern Warfare Remastered, which I think that gave Ace a huge step up because I was like the #1 stat guy at the time and nearly killed my channel again. I have no idea how I survived and how I'm here. But speaking of ability-based shooters, I would actually put Overwatch 1 in the S+ tier. Even though I just complained about a game for being an ability shooter, I put this one up highly. I rank it some of the best of all time for being an ability-based shooter. I think that's because Overwatch did it right. So Call of Duty Infinite Warfare is supposed to be a shooter with abilities, but it wasn't. It was abilities with some shooting. Overwatch was originally designed to be abilities with some shooting, and it plays great. So we're going to take a moment to talk about Overwatch. This is probably the game that I got overall the best at in my life. My very last season, I can't remember if I was high diamond or low masters, but this is a game that I put time and effort into getting good because I thought it was brilliant. If you want to play a true FPS shooter type character, you can do that. If you want to play a character with crazy abilities, you can do that. If you want to play a character that does a lot of stuff in third person, sure. You want to play a tank? Sure. Healer? Sure. You want to parkour on walls? Sure. You want to fly in the air as Pharah? Sure, you can do that. You want to teleport? You want to time travel? You can do all of these things. And on top of that, the shooting elements that they did have in the game were really well defined. The characters were very memorable. They had good skins, but despite what skin they were wearing, you could recognize them from the silhouette. They had so many tiny details. Like each character reloads its gun differently. Tracer's is a time reload. Soldier's is very mechanical. Junkrat's got this herky-jerky gun, so he like slaps it and hits it and does all these goofy things with it. They even walk differently, okay? So like some characters float, you hear the high heels on others. Soldier has this mechanical running. Again, Junkrat is missing a leg, so when you play, your camera bobs up and down because your character is missing a leg. And you can just play true tanks in this game, like World of Warcraft. Reinhardt, I feel like, comes right out of World of Warcraft. Mei feels like she comes right out of Lysandra in League of Legends. It's got, it was one of the very first objective shooters to have this multi-stage thing where you capture 2 points. It was one of the first games to have push a payload. It had an excellent ranked system that had me addicted top to bottom. It had a really fun lore. It had fun character designs. It had really fun Pornhub fan art. Had really fun media. It was a huge esports phenomenon for a while until it wasn't. I think the world of Overwatch. This was a shooter that appealed to so many people. Even my wife, who hates first-person shooters, sat down to play it mostly based on the strength of the characters. It's also a game that did female characters really well, so that's always fun for me. And I think Overwatch is just godly. So let's talk about Halo Reach. I'm giving you a B tier. The campaign actually is a little bit A tier, but the multiplayer I feel like was B tier. We had all this like armor lock stuff. We had vehicles that can be destroyed instead of the near invulnerable ones that I liked. It had sprinting mechanics. I didn't like the melee mechanics. They changed those too. I feel like Halo Reach was kind of a step down from the other Halo series, with the exception of the fact the campaign was fantastic. The campaign was great, but the everything else was not, so I'm dropping it down a level here. What other things are we going to talk about? Are we going to get into Halo? Are we going to do the Halo section? There's a lot of Halos on here. Let's go ahead and hit up Halo. So let's get Halo Combat Evolved. I think it's no surprise to any of you that Halo Combat Evolved is going into the S+ tier section. That was a launch game for Xbox One. Graphically beautiful for the time it came out. It changed first-person shooters forever. For the most part, with the exception of Counter-Strike, which we'll get to in a little bit, shooters at the time, you carried a whole bunch of guns all at once. And this was one of the first ones where you could only have 2. You had a quick grenade button, which was radical at the time. You had enemies that were smart. You had to kill them in different ways instead of just chunking them down. It had a nice, concise little narrative story that left it just open enough to be expanded. You had a fun final level to where instead of fighting a final boss, you just drive on a warthog to escape. I thought everything about Halo was brilliant, including the multiplayer. This was one of the first console games that you could ever play online, and it was a huge pain in the butt to do that, but I did do it and it lagged horribly. But you could also just LAN up a bunch of Xboxes on a Switch or a network or somehow and play 16 or however many player games with your friends. And I did that too, and it was awesome. I remember like all my friends had their TVs together and were playing like 16 person with all these split screens and screaming at each other and doing matches, and God, and then you could go online and play. And the multiplayer was super well designed on top of that. It became a genre of game unto itself. Halo is fantastic. Now, where is Halo Dos? Halo Dos. I do not believe that the raw gameplay in Halo Dos was quite as innovative as the first one. I did like the vehicle hijacking. I like the customizations that we had in multiplayer. I liked a lot of things that we had going on with Halo 2. But the reason, I think its base gameplay, its base shooting and grenade mechanics were a little bit lacking, especially with the battle rifle being as broken as it was. So I'm not going to put it in A tier. I'm actually going to promote Halo 2 up to the S+ tier again, because this game launched with, it was like Bungie.net. You could view your stats. You could customize your Spartan. You could change things about your logo online and it would show up on the console. You could download your console logo online. You could view the heat maps of your deaths and the progress toward things and how you fared against others and how your rank was progressing. This had ranked play. This had matchmaking ranked play. Halo 2 was one of the first games to use the matchmaking system that we all know and love today. Before this, you had to browse and join lobbies and servers and hope the host doesn't kick you out and stuff like that. Halo kicked that to the curb. It went with instant matchmaking. You got to meet random people. It was fun. You got to play ranked and get DDoSed. I really genuinely enjoyed Halo 2. And I don't know where all the other Halos are in here. Halo 3 should be in here somewhere. Here we are. Halo 3, Halo 4, and I think there's also a Halo 5 hiding somewhere in this mess. Yes, a Halo 5. These guys were going to go a little bit quicker. Halo 3 had very little in the way of new innovations, so I'm dropping it down in the A tier. I think it was just all the best parts of Halo and Halo 2 polished and put into a package. It was a mechanically superior game to both of the others. Multiplayer was better, matchmaking was better. It just didn't do very much new. It just really perfected it. So I loved Halo 3. That's probably my favorite one to play, but I can't pretend it was the most creative. Halo 4... That's getting a C for me. Halo 4 is... Oh, God. Yeah, we don't talk about Halo 4. Halo 5, I didn't even play. Just kind of looked terrible. Not my thing at all. It did just occur to me that I've been a little bit unfair to Halo 3. There were some big innovations in this game. Forge mode was nothing shy of amazing. It was basically mod tools for console, and some of the most creative maps in the game were originally created by the community in Forge mode. And it's the first game that I'm aware of that had a theater mode, which I used a ton of back in my early days on machinima.com, making scary stories about sad Spartans, action shorts, and all sorts of fun things. Now, this game had some fantastic community and content creator focused tools. Unfortunately, I don't think those innovations move it up to S tier. I think it still kind of stays in A tier. Let's see what we've got here. Dying Light, the parkour was cool, but the game ultimately was very repetitive to me. Looks great, graphically interesting, fantastic trailer, but the gameplay never really hooked me, so I'm leaving it in C tier. Crysis was an interesting one. Crysis, I think gameplay-wise, was not very good, definitely not S or A. It had very powerful, impressive, amazing graphics at the time. It's still a meme. Can your rig run Crysis? Because I had a friend of mine in college literally set his PC on fire trying to run Crysis. But even when you could run the game, the gameplay was kind of mediocre. So I'm kind of dropping that one down to a C tier. I did not play the Crysis sequels. We did not play Time Splitters 2. And I'm saving Unreal Tournament for a bit. Let's talk about the Doom series. The original Doom, while not the original first-person shooter, was the very first big first-person shooter. This game was fun, it was gory, it was gnarly, it had an amazing soundtrack that is still iconic today. I mean, I played it on Game Boy Advance, I played it on PC, I played it on N64, I played Doom on everything. And even old pixelated goofy Doom is still a fast-paced game that's fun to play to this very day. I think Doom is probably more influential than the original Wolfenstein. Unfortunately, I can't quite give it an S+ tier. It just wasn't very actually innovative for its time. It was just very polished and very popular. Doom 2 was kind of the same thing. It was everything that Doom was. The graphics were a little bit better. The gameplay is a little faster. There's a little bit more story, you know, gnarlier bosses, a little gorier. But was it really revolutionary for the time? No, it was just very catchy and very fun to play. However, I'm going to go, let's say Doom 3. I wasn't very impressed by Doom 3. It was kind of like this survival horror game. It was very much so in the mold of current generation shooters. It kind of felt like Red Faction, but with a horror mod on top of it. And there were neat elements going on trying to make the game scary for once. But we all know what gamers really wanted was Doom Guy just murdering people. Now the Doom remake, I think it's the 2016 version of Doom, I'm moving that back up to the S tier, and I'm going to explain why. This game had phenomenal graphics. The mechanics of the gameplay were great, easily A tier level. The guns, the weapons, the upgrades, all that stuff was very, very fun. The enemies, each one behaved differently. They reacted differently. There were different ways to kill them. Each enemy had like 4 to 6 different executions depending on what area you came in from. Incorporating the gory executions into the gameplay loop worked flawlessly. On top of that, they changed the Doom story a little bit. They got that awesome soundtrack going on again. Mick Gordon took the ideas from the original 2 Dooms and made beautiful music, in a sense, beautiful music. There was this lore, there was this ethos going on with the whole game. And more importantly, I feel like this game was one of the first ones to reinvigorate single-player campaign games that don't have multiplayer. It was just a single-player game. There was no multiplayer elements to it. There was no cooperative co-op. There was no battle pass. It was just a great single-player game, and it sold great because it was fun to play, thus proving single-player games can still be very fun, and we can move into the exact same thing with Wolfenstein New Order. I don't think it was quite as revolutionary as Doom, but it was very similar in that it was a very mechanically polished game that had a very long campaign and a campaign only, and that campaign was very fun. And also they had you killing Nazis back when that was uncool. This was like right after Charlottesville. For whatever reason, Nazis were like, you couldn't make fun of them anymore, and Wolfenstein just comes balls out, swastikas everywhere, killing Nazis, moon bases, eugenics, all the nasty stuff. Still a great story. Wolfenstein 2 I didn't play, but Wolfenstein just kind of copied the Doom model a little bit. Like Doom invented that, Wolfenstein polished it up. Let's move on to some, let's do Bioshocks. Bioshock 1, I kind of give it a B tier game. Gameplay on Bioshock 1, actually not that great. Graphics are great. What really carries this game is its story. Bioshock's story is this beautiful, like corrupted Ayn Rand libertarian nightmare with a great twist in the middle and characters that leave an impact. And this was a game of great philosophies. The actual gameplay, not that different than Doom 3 and some of these other crawl around in a gross place kind of games. The sequels I chose not to play because I'd kind of had all my fill of it from that very first one. The Dark Ayn Rand story kind of did it for me. Oh, there's more Call of Duties here. Let's move into those. Call of Duty 2, you know, I'll probably have to give that one about a B tier. It was great for its time. Mechanically, it worked. It had online play with Xbox. It was a Call of Duty game. I like the beginning where they shoot through the pipe and you can see all the all the light rays come in, or they tell you you're as useful as a potato. But was it innovative? Not really. Was it the most important at the time? Not really. Was it the most polished at the time? No, not really. But we can talk about Modern Warfare 2019. This is a weird one that I feel is almost innovative enough to put up in S tier. They redid the graphics on the engine. They redid the multiplayer. They had the night mode. They put Ground War in, which was basically Battlefield. You had hyper-realistic guns. You had a meaningful, relevant campaign that had a long-lasting impact on players. God, it had so much good stuff. You had Warzone come into that as well. Warzone was part of the Modern Warfare package, which completely changed how everybody's been playing Battle Royales. It's the overall biggest, most polished Call of Duty Battle Royale as of yet. Blackout was fun, and Warzone 2 is still kind of an alpha. The only downside is that the actual base multiplayer gameplay, when you really boiled it down, wasn't particularly innovative. It had all these great innovations, but the base gameplay was still just Call of Duty with mounting and some neat looking guns. It wasn't really anything radically different than what we had seen before, other than some really cool new game modes. So let's talk about, let's go Counter-Strike here. I think this is an opinion that people are going to find very, very, very controversial. I think Counter-Strike is a B tier game at best. I'd actually rather put it in C tier, and this is coming from a guy who played a ton, I mean an actual ton of Counter-Strike back in the day, both on console and on PC. Counter-Strike was innovative in its multiplayer, mostly in that you had the one life thing, you had round-based matches, terrorists, counter-terrorists, but the actual core gameplay of Counter-Strike was so painfully, brutally simple, and the way you aimed and the way the guns work and the way Counter-Strike recoil works was so very backwards to every other reasonable design decision. Even Valorant copied it for no good reason. And all the cool stuff that we got in multiplayer ultimately came later. I don't know if Counter-Strike Source is on here or not. We'll find out. But all the cool stuff with gambling, which was kind of terrible for gaming, with being able to trade items, that all came later with Counter-Strike Source. Counter-Strike 1 was this very highly repetitive, yet very competent game. I will say it was very important for the competitive FPS community. Counter-Strike has been kind of holding down competitive FPSs for a very, very long time. But on the topic of competitive FPSs, let's talk about one of my all-time favorites, Unreal Tournament 2003. This was probably the most polished of all the Unreal sequels, in my opinion, building off of the original, adding a bit of lore, giving it a colorful upgrade, good characters, and I thought fantastic gameplay. Mechanically speaking, I think Unreal Tournament 2003 is superior to a lot of games on this list in terms of actual multiplayer gameplay, mechanics, smoothness, functionality. It had wall running and wall jumping way before any of these other games did, and fun weapons like the acid gun, the bio gun, goop gun we used to call it. You could even play this in the version of Unreal Championship on Xbox Original, just Xbox. Yeah, it was just the regular Xbox. I played Unreal Championship in 2001 and ran a clan with an offensive name. But at the end of the day, it wasn't... I can't say there was really anything groundbreaking about this. It was a game that I'm nostalgic for, but was ultimately probably mediocre in the long run of gaming history. Ooh, we're hitting the Valve section now. Half-Life 1 was a pretty good game. I really enjoyed Half-Life 1. I liked the story. I liked that your enemies were a little bit smart. There were some twists involved. It had a sort of mood going on with it. But I think the real granddaddy of the series isn't Half-Life 1, which did inspire Counter-Strike Source, but Half-Life 2 upended FPSs as we know it because they added a real physics engine. They introduced the Source engine, which is probably, maybe next to Unreal, the most popular engine for all development. A ton of these games here run on the Source engine or a modified version of it. A lot of these up here in the S and A tier do. So you had these really fun physics puzzles. They had brilliant designs with lighting. They still had a fantastic, cohesive, fun story with new characters. I don't think it had a multiplayer. I think Counter-Strike Source was the multiplayer, which is still kind of elevating in a way. And they had a whole bunch of like DLC sequels. There's a VR sequel to this game. This was one of the most immersive games I ever played at the time it came out. It made me really feel like I was in the game when I could interact with the world and with real physical objects and solve puzzles, and it just looked great. It sounded great. This was an FPS story much like Doom, polished and perfected. Portal 2, I'm going to go ahead and put in the A tier. We'll do this one very briefly because Portal itself has to be on here somewhere. There it is. Okay. Portal 2 was a little bit worse than Portal 1. Portal 1 was this $20 scrappy little game with a neat idea, and the story goes off the rails. It inspires a bunch of memes. It uses the Source engine creatively, which is how all things should be used. And I feel that its story, while not as complex, was more concise, and it left a greater impact on me. Portal was a really, really fun game, and like Mirror's Edge, it wasn't a first-person shooter, it was a first-person puzzler, which is something that no other game had done before. It even still has its own speedrunning community, and to this day, people are finding faster ways to do things with portals. Now, we're hitting a huge section of Battlefield. I don't feel that all of these deserve a full discussion of each one. Call of Duty 3 is in here. That one was kind of mediocre. I wasn't a big fan of Call of Duty 3. We'll drop that one down here. We'll do Battlefield 1942. That's the original, massively multiplayer first-person shooter. So many people in matches. Sniping. You could interact with vehicles. The maps were gigantic. The graphics rudimentary compared to today's standards. But it was a scale of a shooter that nobody had ever seen before, and it was consistently fun from start to finish. I played the devil out of Battlefield 1942 on a computer with terrible graphics just because it was fun to try to snipe people out of planes. Now, Battlefield Bad Company 2, I realize, is a fan favorite, and a lot of you guys want me to probably put this up in the S tier because it's got great building destruction and it's got a good story, but the actual shooting, moving, and handling mechanics of this game were terrible, and I feel that drags it down to a B tier at best. The actual gameplay mechanics of Battlefield Bad Company 2 were lacking, in my opinion. I found them to be very awkward, backwards. I felt like I was running around in molasses. It was not very fun for me to play, except for blowing up the buildings and the campaign, which was fantastic. Battlefield 3, and, oof, man. Are these S tier? I'm going to put Battlefield 3 and 4 in the A tier game. In the A tier section. Both of these games were very, very fun when they came out. It was like Battlefield 1942 scaled up. You had better graphics, you had modern weapons. I think Battlefield 4 was the one that had the destructible buildings and some stuff like that. I had a ton of fun. These huge, massive servers. They looked good. They had some goofy mechanics. The suppression mechanic and the way the flashlights and lasers worked were enough to where I actually parodied that on if it were realistic. But these were games that I played a ton. I loved, just like Battlefield 1942, how you could interact with the vehicles and play with the map. The vehicles were a little bit OP. They had the commander mode, which was really neat. And I feel like these were really solid games that are probably superior to Battlefield 1942, just a little bit less innovative. It was kind of like how Doom 2 was just a better version of Doom 1. Battlefield Hardline, that one was pretty bad. Sorry, guys. Battlefield Hardline was kind of doo-doo. Battlefield 1 kind of has the same problem going on. Battlefield 1 doesn't quite hit S tier for me. It was really good. I probably enjoyed Battlefield 1 almost as much as I enjoyed Battlefield 3. I loved the World War I theme. The trailer was great. The melee weapons were great. You could fight trains. You could fight horses. You could shoot people out of planes with bolt-action rifles from your horse like it's Rambo 3. The scale of the battles were beautiful. It's just a lot of the maps were brown and gray and depressing. I do remember having melee fights on top of a blimp that was crashing, so that was pretty amazing. I don't know. It just, the only thing about it is that it just didn't last. For whatever reason, this easily could have been an S tier game, but it didn't have a lot of, outside of the juggernaut, the giant, you know, things you control like the blimp and the train, it didn't have a lot of true innovation. And for whatever reason, the World War theme ran out kind of quick and it didn't have lasting power. It's something I gave up on after a couple of months. And Battlefield 5, I'm actually putting down here in the C tier. Battlefield 5 had some major flaws. It was very glitchy. A lot of the fortifications and new revive mechanics didn't work. You couldn't drive your tanks through buildings the way you were supposed to. Gun mechanics significantly improved. But like Battlefield 1, I quit playing it really, really fast. Okay, we've actually gotten so much stuff on screen now that I have to zoom out again. God, we've got so many to go here. Let's do the Far Cry series. I'll do this one quickly. Far Cry 1 was a pretty good game. Far Cry 3, I feel, is an A tier game. It was very innovative, and Far Cry 3 is the model by which the entire series thus far has been built on. It's open world, it's survival, it's got a crazy story. You're a sort of a loser who becomes a hero. You can take these missions on any way you want. There's a puzzle-solving element to it. And it had I think most importantly, I really felt like I was on an island. It really felt like I was really there doing things, and it left an impression. Far Cry Blood Dragon is basically the same thing, but with an 80s skin. Very fun, though. Far Cry 4, I did not play. Far Cry Primal, it was worse. Had some interesting ideas with animals doing your fighting for you, but it was worse. Far Cry 5, also did not play that one. Call of Duty World War II. Not a very good one. That's going down there in the C tier again. That one was not very popular, and for good reasons. Nobody wanted the World War II theme at the time. The zombies was not very complex or impressive. Neither was the campaign. The multiplayer fizzled. The competitive scene didn't like it. It was forgettable, unfortunately. Except after that second patch. Oh my god, when they dropped that patch in like January or February, this game got so much better and more fun, so I'm bumping it up one more tier. Far Cry New Dawn, did not play. Payday, did not play. Destiny. Here's the problem with being intellectually consistent and honest. I have been rewarding games that have serious flaws for being innovative. Destiny is a game that I love a lot of. I love the theme, I love the graphics, I love the core gameplay, I love the console focus. I absolutely despise the looter shooter element of Destiny. That part was terrible, but it was still very innovative for its time and essentially founded a new genre of Destiny-like games that many other game developers still wish to recreate to this day. So I have to admit, even though I personally didn't like it, it was very, very innovative. Destiny 2, I did not play at all. The Quake series, I actually missed all of these guys. Borderlands, I only played a little bit of. Borderlands was... It had the same looter shooter thing going on, but it just wasn't particularly impressive to me. I'm going to put it down here in C tier. Didn't play that one. Oh my god. We are getting to some big ones here. I'm going to go ahead and do Modern Warfare 2 first, and then we'll talk about Deus Ex. Modern Warfare 2, I genuinely believe, was bigger and more impactful than the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4. This is an S tier shooter, even though it wasn't... I guess I'm being dishonest here. I guess it was everything that COD 4 was, but polished, better, bigger, badder, faster, more fun kill streaks, more weapon customization, more perks, more focus on multiplayer, an absolutely crazy campaign, something that was pretty innovative for its time. It was not as innovative as COD 4. As a spoiler, COD 4 is probably going to go up here and be above it, even though much like Halo 3, it was a polished and better version of these other games. But that's not the one that I really wanted to talk about. The one that I really wanted to talk about after we sort the Unreals that I did not play down here is Deus Ex. Oh my god, what a game. The original Deus Ex is still unmatched to today in terms of storytelling. I'm dropping this up here in editing. I'm going to go ahead and get the clip where they explain the 9/11 World Trade Center terror attack in Deus Ex, but it was like a decade before that happened. Okay, maybe not a decade. It was They said that like America became a police state after a terror attack on the World Trade Center in September 2001, and it was like 5 years before that happened. The entire plot of Deus Ex is cyberpunk. It's got a very, it allows you to make so many decisions, but I'm gushing over this game. I have to get my words together. So Deus Ex is a cyberpunk first-person RPG adventure type game. You have to solve a global mystery, you have to unravel a conspiracy, figure out what's going on, upgrade your character in this extremely complex way from your cyberware to your guns. Every single mission you can play stealth, you can play aggressive, you can try to talk your way through it. There's tons of dialogue choices. The plot is extremely mature and centers around a lot of modern, still ongoing conspiracies and problems that we would have with big tech companies abusing citizens' privacy. All of that ties into this game. And on its surface, like the actual shooting combat elements of the game aren't super impressive. They were quite good for their time, not S tier for their time, but the whole package comes together into one of the most immersive gaming experiences that you will ever have, even to this day. Not really many games hold up to Deus Ex. Now, I did not play Mankind Divided. This Deus Ex remake was, I think, pretty good. I can't quite put it in A tier. It's not quite that polished and good. It's a little bit more of a dumbed down version of the original, but is far more approachable and far easier to play for more people. And even though I respect the original for what it is, I do confess that I probably had more fun playing Deus Ex Human Revolution because it was just more approachable. I could get into it quicker. This one, I feel like I needed like a whole PDF or like a spreadsheet to keep track of my character. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, doo-doo, dog tier. It's right down here with all these other bad COD games. You had magical weapon enchantments, tons of lag, nonsensical story, no graphical improvement. It was like, I did not like this one. I know that's hated. I think a lot of people find this to be more polished than the others. I found it to be less polished and less fun than the others. Left 4 Dead 2, I think, is a solid A tier game. It's just as fun as Left 4 Dead 1, but with more stuff. It just didn't innovate as much. It didn't have as much new crazy stuff going on. It was just Left 4 Dead, bigger, badder, revamped. Played it a ton. Love the characters in that. I actually like the Left 4 Dead 2 characters better than the original, and adding the melee weapons was quite fun too. So Duke Nukem Forever, we did not play. Rainbow Six Siege is going up here in the GOAT category for S+. It had tactical gameplay, the likes of which we had never seen when it came out, using the cameras, using the little cars, using the drones, the gadgets, the equipment, being able to rappel and slide back and forth and spin upside down and breach a room from multiple directions, shoot through walls, and then kick through those walls, all in a fantastic multiplayer package. Unfortunately, not that much of the multiplayer stuff was available when the game first came out, but this is a game that Ubisoft stuck with and has continued to support for, I believe, 7 to 8 years now. It's now a mainstay shooter for tons of people, still played competitively, still big tournaments, still got popular on both console and PC, and the game was so successful on microtransactions and other things that Ubisoft has tried to copy the Rainbow Six Siege model for almost every game that they've made since then. Basically everything that they want, they make. They want to have the long tail of Rainbow Six Siege. Prey was crap. It had really neat, I guess, trippy like portals and mechanics, but it was bad. The Darkness was also pretty bad. Not impressed by that. Didn't play this one. Star Wars Battlefront games were pretty... Oh, these are the old ones. I didn't play the old ones enough to have an opinion, or Metros enough to have an opinion. Call of Duty Black Ops is easily an A-tier game. I'm going to hold out on S tier for this one. It did have some cool stuff. It did have that camera system and theater mode, which was really fun. It had a great plot, I thought. It had secret endings, tons of Easter eggs, created COD memes. This is what perfected the Treyarch multiplayer style. This was a very, very good game, but I feel like it was overshadowed. Is that Blops 3? Where is Blops 2? We'll find Blops 2 in here somewhere, I'm sure. But I do feel that it was overshadowed by its sequel, Black Ops 2. Black Ops 3, controversially, getting an S tier from me. Man, this is the Call of Duty with advanced movement that made it work, that really tied it all together. You had fun, distinct, visible characters, much like Overwatch, with unique abilities that had play and counterplay, wall running, swimming in the water, underwater gunfights, beautiful colors. You had a trippy campaign, not as memorable as the Black Ops 1 campaign. I loved this game. I played Call of Duty Black Ops 3 more than I have played any Call of Duty game ever, and it's one of the very few people that I've gone for like max camo, max unlocks, prestige master, all that. I absolutely love it. The core gameplay loop is great. It had some of the best zombies experiences of all the Call of Duty games, and I just had a blast with it. I have very few bad things to say about it. I loved the reimagining of new maps like Skyjacked. God, that was fun to play. Bulletstorm we didn't play. Super Hot. Super Hot's probably getting... I'm gonna go ahead and it's barely in, but we're putting Super Hot in the let's put Super Hot in the S+ tier. It was very innovative in the VR genre. It was a very fast-paced shooter. You could do a lot of cool things with your guns. It was one of the first couple of VR games you could play fast, you could play competitively, that it really felt like you were doing things instead of like, oh, neat, this is 3D. It had a cool art theme, it had good music, and I think it had a ton of fun mods and DLC and playability. Fallout New Vegas. This is a tough one. I want to put Fallout New Vegas in the S tier because of all the first-person Fallout games. It had by far the best story. It had by far the best decision trees. It was the most role-playing that you got out of any of them, but its launch was an absolute disaster, and it was nearly unplayable for a year, and even when it was playable, the actual shooting gameplay was really, really bad. But man, for a story game, that's fantastic. It's just not very mechanically good. I did not play Fallout 4 or Fallout 76. Here's Blops 2. We're putting Blops 2 up in the S+ tier. What is there that I can say about Black Ops 2 that hasn't already been said? This was probably Treyarch's masterpiece. This was competitive Call of Duty at its best. This was ranked play at its best. This was Call of Duty embracing microtransactions responsibly. It had a great color scheme. It had great looks. It was one of the first Call of Duties where you could choose your own path through the campaign that had so many different endings. The score streaks were iconic and they had great counterplay. There were so many viable weapon builds in this game, and this is probably the one I've played the most, right next to Black Ops 3. Black Ops 2 is a lot of people's favorite Call of Duty game for a reason. Black I unfortunately did not play, or PlanetSide enough. A number of these I actually did not play enough, unfortunately. Stalker, I'm aware, is amazing. It's just not one that I played. I didn't play Fear 2, but I did play Fear Regular. Fear was one of the very few first-person shooters I found to be actually scary, because you're fighting enemies, trying to survive, and it would just throw these curveballs at you, things you weren't prepared for, things that were cruel and would kill you, and you're so worked up trying to survive, you would just jump and get scared. I really liked it. Probably not the most crazy innovative, but I did like it. Now we're getting down here near the end, so what I want to do is very quickly put away all the games that I did not play or did not play enough to have an opinion about, and then hit this last section of very important games. So I didn't play Fear, I didn't do Dishonored, I didn't play very much Arma, and we'll talk about Insurgency mostly with the original. Sandstorm's not too different. Didn't do Time Splitters. Paladins, that's kind of a fun one to talk about. Paladins of the Realm was kind of fun. Didn't play Killing Floor that much. Prey, Metro, Serious Sam, Perfect Dark. Yeah, you can see I've got some gaps in my shooter education. All these down here at the bottom are ones that I didn't play. Borderlands, I didn't play old we already talked about Counter-Strike. Bulletstorm, Resistance 3. I did play Battlefront, so we'll talk about Battlefront. And Duke Nukem 3D is out, Arma 3, Far Cry 2, The Quakes. And we've just got a couple of real hits to talk about here at the very end. Lots of games, so we're going to have to zoom out one more, I think, for any of this to fit properly. So let's talk about Call of Duty Black Ops 4. Oh my god. I tried my best to like this game, guys. I really did. But I didn't. It was everything that I liked about Black Ops 3 taken away and thrown in the garbage and turned into Overwatch and Destiny. It did not have staying power for a reason. The abilities were more abusive, worse. The guns not as fun. The zombies not as fun. Campaign non-existent. I know that they had development problems, but Black Ops 4 was kind of a fail. The original Call of Duty, kind of a mediocre game, not that innovative. Insurgency was very fun in a realistic way. It felt a lot like Rainbow Six Siege. I don't feel like it broke the mold in a lot of ways. I don't feel like it had the best legs of a game. The developers are really cool, but it was really well polished. It was a really good, it wasn't quite mil sim, but it was close enough to where all the army guys I know loved Insurgency. It felt like a little bit more of a hardcore Call of Duty, and it was just kind of right. Fallout 3, I think, is very good. I'm probably going to put it in the... Actually, I'm going to go ahead and put Fallout 3 in the S+ category. It had a good story, and it was innovative because it took a 2D over-the-shoulder game, pixel animated for the original, and converted everything into a true first-person shooter, roughly running on the Morrowind and Skyrim-style engines. The shooting aspects of the game were good on PC. They were terrible on console, so that's kind of a detriment. But you could play in first and third person, you could choose your own story, you could still use the VAT system and freeze time, and I thought that the overall plot and stories and things were quite good and quite approachable. They weren't as fun as Fallout New Vegas, but it was a much, much more polished launch than Fallout New Vegas. Battlefield 2. This one is goated, man. Battlefield 2 was some outrageously fun stuff. They put it on console as Modern Combat. On PC, it was it was everything that Battlefield 1942 had, but with better graphics and a modern skin and a huge scale. It just didn't get the popularity or notoriety that it deserved. But without Battlefield 2, there would be no Battlefield 3 or 4 or 1 or any of these games. All of these games are based on the Battlefield 2 model. And I loved the console version of Battlefield 2. I adored that game. I played that game more than Call of Duty when it was out. I remember my girlfriend, my wife now, JWO Designs, getting mad when she heard me yelling, "Somebody's sniping me from the stupid Asian letters," because it all takes place in China and you can fight on top of like neon rooftops. Loved it. All right, COD 4. This one's goated. It's not as good as Modern Warfare 2. I know that. But it's very, very innovative. This took Call of Duty, which was kind of a tired old franchise at this point, gave it a new skin, polished it up, made it modern, made it relevant, invented progression-based multiplayer of weapon unlocking, invented kill streaks and score streaks and perks to a lesser degree, kept the two-gun system. It felt realistic. The campaign was relevant to what we were going through in Middle Eastern combats at the time. And this is the game that killed Halo. Halo was the #1 game. I was still playing Halo 2 and 3 and these other games. Call of Duty came out and just blew that out of the water. It was a cultural phenomenon that started one of the biggest gaming franchises and some of the most iconic characters of all time, like Soap and Price. And there's very little that I can say about it other than when it came out remastered, I redid all of In Depth for this game just because I loved it so much. It had its flaws, but it really broke the mold. Apex Legends, I'm also putting up in the S+ tier, which is ironic given that I said Titanfall, and I think Titanfall 2 is down here somewhere as well. Yeah, Titanfall and Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 got a downgrade in this rating system because it was slower. Apex Legends is slower than Titanfall 2. There's not any Titans in it. There's a lot of things that were actually taken out of the game. Yet they took some things out and polished some other things and made it better and made a truly unique battle royale that lots of other games have been copying for a very long time now. Call of Duty Warzone and Modern Warfare 19 had to take notes from Apex. It was so popular. I loved this game. I should have kept playing it. I was really sad when it died early because they went like a year with no content because Respawn abandoned it, then picked it back up again. Apex is a game that has fantastic color. It's got fantastic characters, fantastic voice acting, an interesting meta story. If you're talking about Overwatch and female characters, we can't not talk about Apex and LGBTQ characters. This is a surprisingly queer game. Almost every character has extra gas in their tank, yet still the incel-y, neckbeardy, all-white male PC guys love this game because none of that matters. If you don't care about any of that extra stuff, you don't have to deal with it. You just literally don't. You can just play the game and all the characters are still fun. The shooting mechanics are flawless. The moving mechanics are flawless. The looting system is better than most battle royales. It's free to play. Apex Legends is a fantastic game, even if it's on some technical aspects lesser than the Titanfall series that created it. It's finally polished, and I finally have a reason to play. Climbing ranks, getting kills, getting clips, playing better actually matters in Apex where it was forgettable in Titanfall 1 and 2. So that's why I like that game. Team Fortress 2, there would be no Overwatch without Team Fortress 2, ladies and gentlemen, or Team Fortress for that matter. Everything that a lot of these games did with like abilities and objectives and microtransactions, Team Fortress 2 did first on the Source engine. Fun characters, meta story, abilities, competitive, you can buy hats and stuff. And on top of that, it had a fun, I think Team Fortress 2 launched with Source Filmmaker and some other tools that allowed the community to make a ton of fun, crazy stuff. On its technical merits, I don't think it's actually as good as Overwatch or some of these other games, but it influenced them. There would be no Apex without Team Fortress 2. Paladins of the Realm, man, this was a high-res game. It wasn't very good, but man, it was fun. I can't put it in the D tier. It had so many flaws, but this game was just fun as crap. I loved throwing axes at people and riding around on horses and zeppelins and stuff. It was so janky, but man, they nailed the fun aspect of it. Battlefront 2, I didn't play very much. Battlefront 1, I'm going to give a B tier rating. It is a solid, competent Battlefield clone. It's dumbed down a little bit. I feel like that kind of works for its favor because it allows the graphics to be a little bit smoother and less complex, but also allows casual players to get in much easier than they could in Battlefield 3 or 4. You've got third-person mode. You can play as a Jedi. You can be Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader. There's multiplayer stuff. But at the end of the day, the actual shooter, the actual mechanics element of it leaves much to be desired. So I'm going to put it down here in the B tier. And I think that's it for this crazy long video that I've made. Let's take a look at the S, A, and B tiers real quick. We've got Left 4 Dead, Alien Isolation, Mirror's Edge, Overwatch, Team Fortress, Halos, Doom, Half-Life, Portal, Battlefield, Destiny, Deus Ex, Rainbow Six, some Call of Duties, Blops 2 and 3, Super Hot, Fallout, Battlefield, COD 4, and Apex Legends, all in the S tier for changing things up. We've got Resistance, Titanfall, Doom, the original Half-Life, a lot of Battlefields, a lot of the sequels to popular games here in the A tier for being very good and very polished versions of other games that came before them. For the B tier, we've got some sequels that didn't quite make it. For the C tier, we've got some innovative ideas that flopped or games with good stories and bad gameplay. And then down in the D tier, we just have bad games that weren't fun to play. And a number that I didn't play. Actually, going through and doing this video reminds me of how many more games I have yet to play. How much of an expert I am actually not. And I can't wait to dive into more. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.